Hey there. All right. We got about 10 minutes before I got to run to an appointment. So, good morning. Who dat? Just wanted to talk to you guys quickly about some of the coaching hire process that the Saints are going through currently. I have to say, I'm not surprised that they've been going after coaches, but the names are fast and furious. I mean, they're making up for lost time. Obviously, they were a little bit behind in their search compared to some of these other teams that really have probably known for a while that they're going to be looking at head coaches. And so, obviously, the Saints took their time. They gave Sean Payton a little bit of a landing strip to kind of make his decision. And when he decided to retire and that became official, they were kind of behind the eight ball in terms of the lead that other teams had on them. Terry, Chris, good morning to you guys. Who dat? Happy Friday. Yeah. So, morning cocktail. We do this Monday through Friday. Typically not on the weekends unless big news comes. But I will tell you guys, Luke, good morning. I will tell you guys that I'll spill the beans here. Ralph and I have an appointment at 2 o'clock to do an interview with Connor Payton. So really looking forward to catching up with him again. We've had him on the show before. And so that's our big surprise. We'll have an interview with him. We'll get a chance to talk to him about Home Team, the new movie that just came out today. So definitely check that out if you haven't already. Good morning, Liam. Uh, it looks like, yeah, good afternoon to all in Europe, he says. Liam, I think you are in Scotland. Anyway, remind me if I'm wrong. But yeah, so Home Team just came out. We'll ask him a little bit about that, but obviously Ireland. Sorry, Liam. That's probably Scotland's probably really insulting for me to say that. So my apologies. But I would say that we'll obviously talk about his dad leaving and how he feels about that and his connection in New Orleans. Obviously with Connor, it was important to him to make the communication to New Orleans. I don't know if you guys saw that on social media that he posted about his dad leaving the Saints and what the fan base and the communities meant to him. And he didn't have to do that. The Payton family, his sister did it too. And they could have taken that very privately and just kind of dealt with it internally. So it was interesting to see that communication go out publicly. And obviously it meant a lot to him to do that. And I know they feel a special connection to the fan base. So it'll be really interesting to hear what he has to say about everything and kind of get just his insights about what's next for him too. Because I know he wants to be a GM. He's about to graduate college. He wants to be an NFL scout and a GM. So it'll be interesting to talk about his path. So anyway, yeah, we'll be posting that later. But you should look out for it. We'll record at 2 o'clock Eastern, and my guess is that you will release that at some point around 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock Eastern once Ralph has had a chance to edit it. So that's what's on the horizon. Chinadu, I think I'm gonna watch the movie. Yeah, I'm gonna watch it. I think I'm gonna try to sneak it in before the interview, so I know what I'm talking about. But I'm a little tight for time, so we'll see if I can get it in. But yeah, I do plan to watch it. For a minute there, when Sean Payton was leaving, hey Jerry, you're here finally. Happy Friday. Um, when I was when Sean Payton first retired, I was like, that's it. I'm not watching the movie. Yeah. So that was kind of my take for a minute there. But it's about Connor too, and I've kind of gotten over that. I'm part of the acceptance stage of the grieving process with Sean Payton, and yeah, I mean we're talking about the new hire now. We're moving on and seeing what's next for the Saints. So Byron Leftwich and Brian Flores. I mean, those are two African American high profile head coaches. I think both would be phenomenal. To be honest, to me, those are much more attractive hires than Aaron Glenn. And that's not to say anything negative about Aaron Glenn, who I think is a tremendous coach, did a great job with the Saints, and is a good candidate to potentially be the defensive coordinator. I'm not sure if he's allowed to make a lateral move. I don't know if that's permitted in the NFL. But to me, Aaron Glenn is the least attractive, I would say, of the four head coaches that the Saints are considering. Um, Dennis Allen, to me, still has a leg up. And the main reason I say that is obviously continuity. But because the Saints defense, I mean, from an identity standpoint, I think the Saints lean defensively at this point. And I just look at a guy like Leftwich or a guy like uh, Eric Bieniemy, who surprisingly hasn't been in the conversation yet for the Saints. But um, the reason I pause about Leftwich or Bieniemy is Sean Payton really couldn't make anything happen with this offense last year, and so who's to say these guys are either? You know, and with Leftwich, or I'm sorry, not with Leftwich, with Bieniemy in particular, to me, it's a very similar profile to Pete Carmichael in the sense that he has Mahomes, Andy Reid's calling the plays. He has Travis Kelce. He has Tyreek Hill. I mean, what offensive coordinator would not succeed under those parameters with that supporting cast around him? And so that's not to diminish him in any way, but that's why Pete Carmichael's never had a job. I mean, Pete Carmichael maybe personality and he's a little bit more introverted and that sort of thing, but on paper, when you look at a guy that has had maybe the best quarterback in the NFL, two of the best playmakers, a head coach supporting him. I mean, it looks like Pete Carmichael. Pete Carmichael had Sean Payton calling the plays, Drew Brees as the quarterback, Marcus Cole. I mean, we can, Sproles, Graham. I mean, we can go down the list. But yeah, I guess you're right. It does kind of diminish him, Luke. But I mean, that would be the question mark for me. Like, if you give Bieniemy this offense with no quarterback, no real exciting playmakers besides Alvin Kamara. Obviously, they're going to have to draft some. I mean, we'll see. Michael Thomas obviously comes back, but I don't know. I'm uncertain about Bieniemy, if I'm being honest. And to me, Leftwich. Oh gosh, I mean, I guess you could say with Arians, you could say something similar, but to me, Leftwich, he's been a quarterback in the league that was successful, so he has the mind of a quarterback, and I like that. And he's won a Super Bowl, and he's worked with Tom Brady, and so Leftwich to me, and he's younger. He to me, he's a little bit more attractive of a prospect than Bieniemy, if I'm being honest. Bieniemy also has a sordid past. Now, I believe that's behind him, but I know that that's probably what's been the hang up in him getting a job. I mean, let's be honest. Like, if you're black, it's hard to get a head coaching job in the NFL. That's just a fact, and we have to be honest about that. We have to call it what it is. And so I think that's part of the barrier for Eric Bieniemy. We have to be real about that. But I think the mistakes he's made in his past, and you can Google it, you can look him up. He's had accusations of sketchy stuff. He's had, I believe, he's been arrested for crimes that he's been allegedly accused of. And so, like, you look at that, and NFL owners, when he's getting interviewed, he's being asked about that. He's being told, "Convince me this isn't you anymore." And I believe he's doing an effective job of that, but I don't know that he interviews great. And so that's a tough barrier for him, I think, and that's part of the deal with Bieniemy. And so anyway, I'm not totally against it. I just feel like Leftwich is maybe yes. And yes, Luke, it was 25, 30 years ago. And by all accounts, that's behind him, so I'm not trying to make him out to be, some ex-con or anything at this point. I think he's turned his life around. But I think there's a reality that owners, especially rich white owners, again, we have to be honest about what this is. That's doing him no favors, regardless of the fact that it was a long time ago. And that's, it's the unfortunate reality of the way the NFL is set up, in terms of ownership and all that. I think you know where I'm going with that. So anyway, enough said there. But I with Bieniemy, I think he's a good leader. I think he's a good person. And so I think that is behind him. So I would be willing to give him a chance. But look, I mean, when you're interviewing guys like Flores and Leftwich, I mean, these are impressive candidates, man. And it's going to come down to the interview. We're not going to be sitting in the interview room, but it's going to come down to what they say and how they sell you on a vision. And they're going to have to sell you big time. And I think it's great that they're coming in the building and selling the Saints on their vision. But they're going to have to really knock Mickey Loomis's socks off to unseat Dennis Allen, because again, you have continuity. I think you're leaning defense anyway, which is why, to me, Flores is probably the most attractive option of the three. I'm talking of the three coaches that are being interviewed from the outside. But with Dennis Allen, look, the team already likes him. You have an existing staff, so you don't have to fire a bunch of people. Like, there's a chance that if someone else comes in, you're going to have to weigh between which part of the existing staff do they keep, because these guys are all under contract, versus how many guys they fire and they try to bring in from the outside. So that complicates things. And I think there's a lot of symmetry in the scouting department knows what kind of players to look for. They know what kind of players to target, and I think you can keep a lot of similarities with just tweaks that Dennis Allen wants to make. And I just think it just depends. Like, if you're going to blow the whole thing up, then I'm like, yeah, let's get Flores or Leftwich in here, and let's rip it to the studs and build it back the way they want. If they have some incredible vision that Mickey Loomis is completely sold on. But if not, and if the goal this year is to be as competitive as possible, then I think you want to try to keep things as steady as possible. And I do think some tweaks would be important. And you would want Dennis Allen to have a vision. You wouldn't want Dennis Allen to say, I just want to run it the way Sean did. And because that's not going to work. Sean Payton's not here anymore. And if you try to execute his vision, it's going to be a disaster. We saw in 2012 how that went. So I think DA has to have in this interview a vision. He has to communicate that clearly, but these have to be his guys for the most part. I mean, maybe a couple tweaks are fine. But I think the existing structure, that if he can lean on Sean Payton's vision, but iterate with his vision, I think that's probably the best case scenario. I mean, Mr. Wallace says this is smoke and mirrors. Dennis Allen will be the next head coach. I mean, look, it makes too much sense. And again, I go back to the audition that he had when Sean Payton had COVID, and Dennis Allen was the head coach, and they beat the Bucks 9-0. And when the Bucks went to the playoffs, won the division. Tom Brady is in the MVP discussion. They shut him out 9-0. I don't see how you could pass an audition with flying colors any better than that. I mean, that's as good as it gets in terms of showing up when the spotlight is on you. And that was on national television. So, yeah, I mean, look, man, he's earned his right to be the head coach, in my opinion. And I think he should get that shot. Now, the Rooney Rule, yeah, I think Mr. Wallace, Jasper Bowden are saying, like, the Rooney Rule is what it is. And I agree. I think there's a good chance that if it wasn't for the Rooney Rule, that they probably would just give the job to Dennis Allen and be done with it and just quickly move on. So I agree with you guys that this is a little bit smoke and mirrors, and they have to follow the rules because Sean Payton retired, and they have to interview at least 2 African-American coaches. But because this rule exists, which is, I think we can all agree it's a great thing, because it exists, you might as well get Flores and Leftwich, and I would bring Bieniemy in too. I hope they interview him, but like, you might as well bring these guys in. Why not? Aaron Glenn too. Like, see what they have to say. Like, I think it's a great benefit that you're forced to do this, and like that you get to bring some of these candidates that are, I think, the most appealing. I am thrilled. No, Aaron Glenn's different. Like, he has a previous relationship with the Saints. I'm not clear that he's a superstar candidate at this point in his career. But Leftwich and Flores, you can't argue otherwise. Those guys are primo candidates that are as attractive on the market as any coaches out there. And Bieniemy too. And why not bring them in, interview them, get a chance to see what they have to say? Because I agree, you're probably going with Dennis Allen, but the worst case here is that they say something that impresses you so much that you're like, oh, wow, maybe we should go in this direction, And so I view it as like a forced benefit. And I agree with you guys. It probably ends up with Dennis Allen, but I am thrilled that the Saints are forced to do this. And you know what? Kudos to the Saints, because they could have just and been like Aaron Glenn and Richard. They could have gone with 2 guys, on one that was on their existing staff last year, 1 guy on their existing staff this year. Check the box, 2 guys they know, make it easy, and then boom, you go Dennis Allen. They could have done that, but they're going to the outside and they're bringing in the most attractive candidates that are out there. And I think it's a great thing, and I applaud the Saints for it. And they're obviously taking this coaching search seriously. And they're not just going to hand it to Dennis Allen. They're not. Like he's going to have to go through the interview process. He's going to have to nail it. Again, I think his audition with the game and everything is, there's no doubt that he is, and he has the experience of being a head coach in the past. Granted, it was a terrible failure, but there are reasons for that. I think the personnel that he had with the Raiders, especially at quarterback, was a joke. I mean, it was awful. So he was set up to fail there. But it's going to be interesting. And look, at this point, you should feel great as a Saints fan because whoever the Saints end up with out of these candidates, look, if Aaron Glenn gets the job, let's just say, it would be a huge upset. I mean, odds-on favorite is Dennis Allen. Number 2, I would probably put Flores and Leftwich probably even if I were odds maker, and then I would put Aaron Glenn last. If Aaron Glenn gets this job, can you imagine how ridiculous of an interview he must have had? And so, I don't know, like, kind of either way, like, no matter which one of these 4 they hire, I'd be kind of thrilled, if I'm being honest. Um, so Yannick Mack asks if Beanie Enemy is hired. I like it, but does that mean DA goes elsewhere? DA has to get hired by someone else as head coach. He's not going anywhere. He's the defensive coordinator. So if Dennis Allen doesn't get this job, he stays as defensive coordinator unless someone else offers him a head coaching job. So that's the beauty here, is that there is a scenario. I do think if the Saints pass on Dennis Allen, he's still a good candidate and he has a shot. I don't know that he'll get a job. My thing all along is I don't think Dennis Allen is getting a head coaching job this year if it's not with the Saints. So I think there is actually a good chance that you could hire Leftwich or Beanie Enemy to be your head coach, and Dennis Allen sticks around and he's your defensive coordinator. The flip side of that is Beanie Enemy or Leftwich may say, I don't want you as my defensive coordinator, and they fire him. Like that's the thing. They may want to bring in their own guys and their own staff. So anyway, that's it. It's going to be super, super interesting to find out how this plays out. But I think the search is at a great place, and you should too. And maybe this is all for show, bringing these African-American coaches in because they have to. But again, man, you have to be pleased that they have a chance and that they're going to get their opportunity to talk to the Saints brass, because I think you can't really get more impressive and promising candidates than these. So it's exciting. And with that being said, remember we have an interview with Connor Payton today. Really excited to share that with you guys. We'll post it on saintshappyhour.com. So go there. Please consider becoming a patron. All of you, smash that like button. Do it right now. Hit the like button, and please share it if you can. And consider subscribing also to our YouTube page below. All right, thank you guys. Who dat? Happy Friday. Have a great weekend. Looking forward to the playoffs this weekend. Hope the Rams lose. Make sure you root against the Rams, and we'll see you on Monday. Who dat?